Welcoming everyone, and we are recording. That's great. Welcoming everybody on Zoom. And as you know, tonight our program is environmental benefits of urban forests, and we are excited to have that. We are very grateful to our partners, and here is one of our partners. His name is Colin, and he's keeping us straight tonight. So, great. So we have Ollie, our host at UNCA, and we are very grateful for them and for Colin. We are also there are 3 different parts of Sierra Club, and we would encourage you to become members. There is the National Sierra Club, and I think we have forms out on the table where you could join maybe for $15, and every month you get this beautiful magazine that tells you all the international trips and all of the opinions written by National. The second part of Sierra Club is our state chapter, and it resides basically in Raleigh. And they are working on a lot of issues on that side of the state, in particular chipping, cutting down the forest to make renewable, quote unquote, fuel for Europe to burn up our trees so that we can grow more trees. And we're trying very hard to get that stopped. And of course, there's us, and we would like you to like us any way that you can. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we are certainly on website, WNC Sierra Club. If you are not part of our newsletter, if you will go to our website, wnccsierraclub.org, and actually on the front desk, there's a QR code. Are we advanced or what? You could take the QR code and you could sign up to get the newsletter every second Saturday. And that gives you the Zoom links, and that gives you who to vote for, and you name it. That would give you all kinds of info. Land acknowledgement, we want to very graciously acknowledge the Cherokee, who have been for generations taking care of this land, and we are very grateful for the land that we're on right now. We have a program each first Wednesday of each month, except, of course, there's always an exception. Next month, golly gee, we're not going to be here, we're going to picnic. And I'm going to have another slide in just a minute to tell you where to come and enjoy and have a picnic. But every first Wednesday, and before this 7 o'clock public and open to the public meeting, we have a 5 o'clock upstairs. If you would like to be part of that, that's the leaders meeting where we put our heads together and say, gee, what programs would we like to have in the future? So to let you know, there certainly will be one in October about the election, and we will ask all of you to help us with that one for sure. The Kids Adventure Club, I'm going to invite Rob Campbell, who's going to tell you about our hikes and this wonderful program.
Hey everybody, so Ed Maggart is unfortunately not here today. He leads the Kids Adventure Club. So basically, yeah, this is just an opportunity for kids to get involved and spend some time out in nature. There's a few opportunities coming up over the next month or two. So the first one is going to be June 12th. There's going to be an outing to the Bailey Mountain Preserve in Mars Hill. And then next one, June 30th, there's going to be one to the Holly Discovery Trail. That's at Lake James State Park. And then July 7th, there's going to be one at the Dr. Wesley Grant Community Center. And then there will also be another July 16th. The location for that one is undecided, but it's going to be either the Sycamore Flats or Holmes Educational State Forest or the North Mills River Recreational Area. So if you're interested in getting involved with that, either through volunteering or through kid participating, please feel free to reach out to Ed Maggart, and he can give you more information on that. And then I also want to discuss some of our outings that are coming up over the next month. So we actually have 4 outings this month. The first one is going to be June 13th. Our outings leader, Amber, is going to be leading a hike from Sam's Gap to the Hogback Ridge Shelter on the Appalachian Trail. So that's going to be June 13th at 8:30 a.m. It's a 5-mile hike, moderately strenuous. It's a really nice area, great section of the AT. And then the next one is going to be Monday, June 15th. Ed is going to be leading a hike up Flat Laurel Creek to the peak of Sam's Knob. So that's another really great area. Gets to an elevation of around 5,100 feet. There's a 360-degree view at the top of Sam's Knob. It's a really nice hike there. Moderately difficult, about 7.5 miles. So that'll be 9 a.m. June 15th. And then June 18th, David will be leading a hike to the Camp Alice Commissary Ridge hike. So that's an easy high elevation hike in the Black Mountains near Mount Mitchell. It's about 4 miles round trip, and that is in a roadless area, which we'll discuss more in a minute here. And then I'll be leading one June 27th to the Hickey Fork Trail, which is another roadless area. And that hike is booked out, but the other 3 all still have spots available. So if you're interested in those, please feel free to check them out on our website or reach out to any of the hike leaders. And then as Judy mentioned, we have our annual picnic coming up. That's Saturday, July 18th from 12 to 3 p.m. at West Asheville Park. And that's 198 Vermont Avenue. You go on Vermont Avenue, it's in West Asheville, right off of Haywood, across from where the Westville Pub is. You just follow Vermont Avenue to the end, and that's where the West Asheville Park is. So everyone is welcome to that, so please feel free to join us next month. And then this is, of course, the roadless rule, which we just mentioned. So the issue here is the USDA is proposing to remove protections on 45 million acres of forest nationwide, which would open them up to logging and mining. These are areas that have been roadless and protected for 25 years at this point. In our area, this includes about 150,000 acres, including some really popular areas in the Craggy Mountains, the Linville Gorge area, and over near like Sam's Knob, down the Blue Ridge Parkway. A lot of really beautiful, pristine areas that, due to the roadless rule protections, are able to stay that way. And if we lose those protections, a lot of our favorite places to hike and camp in western North Carolina in the Pisgah-Nantahala Forest are going to be opened up to logging and mining. So obviously we don't want that. So please stay tuned on this. We're already collecting comments. The next comment period for the draft environmental impact statement is going to open up soon, but we'll definitely be keeping everybody posted. You can go ahead and submit comments here if you'd like to do that preemptively. And also, if you want to contact your legislators, that's a great idea too, and just let them know that you support keeping the roadless rule in place. And then the last thing I want to mention is the Duke rate hike. So Duke Energy is asking the Utilities Commission to increase rates by 18%, which is pretty staggering, even by Duke standards. So for a lot of residential customers, that's about an extra $20 to $30 a month on your utility bill. I know none of us want that, and it's not even really for good reasons either. A lot of this is Duke essentially trying to make us subsidized for AI data center cost and also for increased fossil fuel build out when they could be building renewables that would, result in cheaper bills. So yeah, please submit a comment for this at the North Carolina Utility Commission's website here. All right, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Rob. And Colin, I don't know, we're kind of hearing an explosion from our breath. I don't know if there's anything you can do about that. But I want to acknowledge that we have a couple of speakers tonight, Mary Schultz, who I will introduce briefly, and Allison Ornsby, and David Clark is going to speak in our question and answers, in particular about Save the Woods. Mary Schultz is a master's in biology and taught undergraduate courses in biology and environmental science at UNCA. Warren Wilson, Western Carolina, and right now she's teaching at Mars Hill. Allison is co-chair of our tree protection task force, and David is a botanist, professor of biology at UNCA, a master's PhD from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, postdoctorate at the Smithsonian, and started teaching at UNCA in 2000, teaching botany. So we're very grateful to have these three people. So, okay, Mary, you are up. Yes, hold the questions until the end, and on Zoom, please put it in chat. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
All right, let me get my business here. It's off the desktop. Is it attached? It's not on the desktop. There we go. Awesome, thank you. Beautiful. Not like I do this every day or anything. So I'm going to talk about urban ecosystem services. Ecosystem services, specifically forest ecosystem services, but I usually like to back out and give some foundation and some concepts and some definitions when I get started. But do you guys recognize this picture? Anybody recognize what's going on in this picture? Look, there's downtown Asheville. Here is the university, right? The university is right here. This is, I guess, Broadway, the traffic circle. Oh no, this is University Heights, and there's the traffic circle. And here is South Campus, the 45 acres of urban forest that belongs to UNCA. And I'm guessing that our house is right about here. We live near and in the forest. Sure. All right, so told I need to talk louder. So here's the agenda for tonight. We're going to do definitions and review. What is an ecosystem? How do we define it? How do we study it? How do we determine what the benefits are? What are the services that ecosystems provide, specifically forest ecosystems? What types of ecosystem services do we recognize? And then I have a few statistical slides about US forests, urban forests, and then a few from research done in Asheville, urban forests, that was published in 2018. So ecology is the scientific study of ecosystems. So when we talk about ecology, we're talking about ology, the study of ecosystems. And ecology encompasses several different subdisciplines: hydrology, genetics, atmospheric science, biochemistry. It's a super huge and complex field, and they're split into subdisciplines where you can study different levels of ecological organization. So the scientific study of processes, it's a system, right? Ecosystem. So we are studying processes that influence the abundance and the distribution of organisms, right? How many they are, where they occur, and the energy that moves through that system. That's a key word there, energy, for ecosystems, because when we move through the hierarchy of biological organization, it's not until we get to ecosystems that we start talking about energy. So let's take a look at that biological organization. Here's the hierarchy. We're starting small. When we start with atoms and molecules, we're not even talking about biology yet. It's not until we get to cells that we start talking about biology, right? And cells aggregate into tissues, tissues aggregate into organs, organs aggregate into organ systems aggregate into organisms, right? Individual organisms. And when I mean Organ systems is like your cardiovascular system, right? We're talking about systems. We're talking about processes. We're talking about chemical reactions. So then organs will organize into organisms, right? Individual organisms. It shows a leaf here for a plant. You know, plants only have 3 organs: root, stems, and leaves. Anything on a plant that's not a root, a stem, or a leaf is a modified version of one of those organs. So organisms, individuals of a species aggregate into populations, populations aggregate into communities, communities aggregate into ecosystems. Finally, we got to ecosystems, the most inclusive and the most complex of all of these organizational levels, right? We're including everything below it. Next up is the Earth, right? The Earth is a collection of different ecosystems. So here's our organizational hierarchy. When we talk about ecosystems, we're talking about the physical environment. We're talking about the organisms, the individual species that live in that environment. We're talking about the interactions between those organisms, not just between organisms and the abiotic factors, including things like sunshine, water, minerals, things that we don't consider alive. Each level of organization has its own emergence properties. Like I said earlier, it's energy that is the emergent property when we start talking about ecosystems. Right, so we're including interactions, we're including biotic and abiotic, but we're not until we start talking about ecosystems that we start including energy. So ecosystems are made up of communities. Some people have trouble with the definition of community. They seem to be fleeting. They seem to be temporary assemblages, right, of different organisms, of different species, of different populations. The NC Heritage Program defines it as a reoccurring assemblage. It's a temporary stage and it shifts. So this creates some difficulty in terms of studying it, right? Because it doesn't stay the same. It wasn't up until 300 years ago that we started seeing white pines and red maples occurring together in a community. Now they're all over the place, and it's just expected that that's what you would see in that kind of a community. But they are assemblages. Sir Arthur Tansley, this dude right here, love the stash, he was the first one to coin the term ecosystem. And another difficulty in defining communities and ecosystems is a matter of scale. Right? So we can talk about the community of students at UNCA. We can talk about the population of individuals in Asheville. And you can go even further out. You can talk about Buncombe County, right? We can talk about the different communities, the different populations of organisms that live countywide. But we can also talk about Southern Appalachians. We can talk about the French Broad watershed, right? So we can go from the smallest community that's living in whatever's in the back of your refrigerator, right? The smallest community up to a very large scale. And ecologists study all different scales of these systems. So it's the entire system, the physical factors, those abiotic factors, and the way that they're interconnected. Okay? I put this up here because I use it with my students. There's a great film about the reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone in 2009 and the effect that the wolves have across the entire ecosystem. They call it a trophic cascade because the effect of the wolves have such a huge rippling effect. It improves water quality. The elk populations were getting too large and destroying the banks of the rivers where they forage. When the wolves were introduced, they didn't forage down in the open by the rivers anymore. They went back where they could be hidden and safe from predation of the wolves. That allowed plants to grow, it allowed fish increased populations because the water quality increased, beaver were reintroduced, birds had places to nest. I mean, the effects were just so immense from reintroducing the wolf into Yellowstone. It's a great study of ecosystem effects. So this pyramid right here is an illustration of how energy moves through an ecosystem, right? We talked about ecosystems being the first level of biological organization where we talk about energy. Across the bottom here, we have the plants, the primary producers, the source of energy and food for everything. The source of food and energy for everything, right? We're talking about the primary producers. They're the ones making the food. We have the second level here, primary consumers are the herbivores, the ones that eat the plants. And then we have the secondary consumer, the ones that eat the plants, right? And then we have the predator, right? The apex, tertiary consumer. Nothing eats that. But what's represented here between the red and the blue is energy. So this whole bottom block is energy produced by plants. And according to the second law of thermodynamics, right, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It only gets transformed. And when it gets transformed, we lose some, usually in the form of heat. When the energy produced by plants gets transformed and consumed, this blue block right here represents all of the energy that's produced by plants that gets lost from the system as heat. See, this red block is the same size as the second block where the consumers are eating. That's what gets passed. Same here, this blue block is what gets lost as heat energy from the system. The red part, right, is what gets passed to the next level consumer. So we're talking about trophic levels, primary consumers, right here, primary producers, other plants. And you notice each time energy gets passed, energy also gets lost. Blue is the lost, red is the passed. Also notice that the relative amount of energy at the primary producer level, at the bottom, at the grass, the majority of it gets passed, right? Blue is smaller than red. As we move up that pyramid, the blue starts taking up a larger portion of that energy that's produced by that level. And by the time we get up here, there's not even enough energy to get past. Right? There's so little energy, the majority of it gets lost. A larger and larger chunk of energy gets lost as we move up that trophic level. This is what it really looks like. Actually, we simplify it. We have our little pictures here of our rabbit and our cow. We have a little snake, a little tree, some grass, a little flower. We simplify this so we can wrap our brains around these super complex concepts of energy movement through trophic systems in an ecosystem, right? But here, this is what it really looks like. This is a food web. It's actually a simplified food web. That's a simplified food web for the Northwest Atlantic. Look what's in the front there, cod. It's in the middle. This graphic is a little old, so I imagine there's some changes, but it's incredibly complex. One of the services that ecosystems provide is nutrient cycling. Energy moves through an ecosystem. Right? We saw it goes from level to level to level. Some of it gets lost as heat. Nutrients are recycled. There's a constant or a homeostasis of nutrients like carbon, like nitrogen. This is an illustration of the nitrogen cycle, right? It's moving through the system. It starts out as atmospheric nitrogen. But atmospheric nitrogen, and there's a lot of it, isn't usable for plants. It needs to be transformed or fixed into a form that's usable for plants. You know what does that? Bacteria. Bacteria that live in the soil fix nitrogen into ammoniacal nitrogen usable for plants. Plants use it. Plants get eaten. They're the creators of the food. And that nitrogen gets cycled throughout decomposers. When the plants die, when the animals die, they get decomposed. Some of that nitrogen gets replaced in the soil that was removed, that had been fixed. Guess what happens then? It gets denitrified into atmospheric form again, and the cycle continues. Bacteria and decomposers are the key players in those transformations. Nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus, all of the NPK on your fertilizer bag, nutrients get recycled in an ecosystem. So energy moves through the system, nutrients get recycled, water gets recycled too. The hydrogeological cycle, right? The hydrocycle, it gets replaced. I thought I took this out, but I'm glad I kept it in. One of the first long-term ecological research sites, maybe not one of the first, but certainly one of the oldest, was established in New Hampshire in the White Mountains. And what they did, talk about scale, they were studying ecosystem services, ecosystem recycling of nutrients at a watershed scale, right? So here's an entire watershed that they cut the trees in, and they caught the water with this little weir down here at the bottom. And here's what they found. Surprise, surprise. Ecology is the science of explaining the obvious, right? Surprise, surprise. Nitrogen levels skyrocketed because there weren't any plants up there taking the nitrogen up, right? They weren't supporting the bacteria in the soil that fixed the nitrogen for the plants to use. So the water, all that nitrogen was being moved, right? And it was lost from the soil here. This is a real elegant design because the watersheds are adjacent to each other and they experience pretty much same conditions, so they have a control, right, for their experiments. We have a similar place here in North Carolina. It's called Coweta Hydrologic Lab. It's down in Otto near the Georgia state line. They do watershed-wide research with the Forest Service and with UGA. So ecosystem services, right? Recycling nutrients, moving energy. We tend to divide them into 4 different major categories. The services that ecosystems provide are typically defined by how they benefit humans. Of course they are, right? How they benefit humans. So support, provisions, regulation, and culture. The support services, nutrient cycling, soil formation are required for all other services. Those services are required for all other services. Regulating services, flood regulation, climate control, water purification, air purification, I would add to that. Provisioning services, I like to say when I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to gather provisions, right? So provisioning services are those things that are consumable, right? Food, water, wood, fiber, etc. Provisioning services, and then this is one of my favorites, the cultural services, specifically human. So I used to think that I liked going out in the woods because I felt better when I was in the woods. And I'm just a tree hugger, right? No, there's research now. I'll get into that in a minute. There's research that shows there are health benefits, psychological benefits from being in the woods. So cultural services are ecosystem services, okay? So let's talk about forest ecosystems, finally, right? We finally get to the forest ecosystems. And then we'll end with urban forest ecosystems. But here's some data that are from across the United States. So we're not narrowing it down to Buncombe County or Asheville yet. So the power of trees in the United States, carbon dioxide is sequestered. Carbon is sequestered and is removed. Carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, is removed from the atmosphere by the tune of 1,438 million tons. Million tons, right? Removed from the atmosphere by trees. Carbon dioxide is produced naturally, but it's also produced by humans. So anthropogenic sources of carbon dioxide are what increases it in the atmosphere and is creating global warming, or contributing to creating global warming. It's not just CO2, but it's the main culprit. Stormwater runoff that's avoided, 398,000 million gallons. And then air pollution absorbed, 35.4. So stormwater runoff is a big deal. Stormwater is one of the greatest pollutants that we deal with. Stormwater runoff from impervious surfaces is full of pollutants. I mean, there's fertilizer in there, there's bacteria in there, there's whatever falls off of a car engine, right? Think of a big impervious parking lot. All that stuff gets washed. Oil and toxins and you name it, it's all in there. It's the leading source of water pollution in urban areas, stormwater runoff. Sedimentation. And it all goes right to the rivers, right? So you're sending sedimentation, you're sending all these toxins. If you have impervious surfaces, that's what's going to happen. But if you have trees that absorb water, plants that absorb water from the soil, they're going to mitigate the toxins that end up in the river. Right? They're going to use that fertilizer. They're going to pass it through their systems. The chemical reactions in the plants are going to deal with the issues that you find with stormwater runoff. Here's the picture of the swimming pool. Right? When I was talking about the Olympic-sized pool, how many of you guys have swum in an Olympic-sized pool before? Yeah, a few of you. I never have. Here's the pool. See these little black dots down here? Those are the people. So that's one Olympic-sized swimming pool. Right? So here's the people down here, right? Here's the pool. So the trees prevent 40 billion gallons of runoff, which is about 600,000 swimming pools full. They absorb the water. They transpire water into the atmosphere in the form of a gas. So they take up the liquid, transpire it into the atmosphere, and handle all of that water. Here are some of the other toxins that are released into the atmosphere that are implicated in global warming. So we have nitrogen oxide, CO2, all of that. All of those particulates, all of those pollutants are cleaned out of the air by plants and trees specifically. It reduces cost of heating, cost of cooling. Right? So we have an urban heat island effect where those impervious surfaces collect and hold heat, radiate it back into our atmosphere, whereas a wind break and shade around trees can reduce energy costs. Here's some more statistics. 7% reduction in energy used, 20 to 50% of heating costs reduced just by having trees around the house. Avoided emissions. Here's a cost. Here we have a dollar sign, right? $3.9 billion in avoided emissions by not running your air conditioner half the time because you have trees shading the house. Right? The shaded surfaces tend to be between 20 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than unshaded surfaces. So reduced heating loss, reduced emissions into the atmosphere, benefits of trees. Here's what I was talking about, the improved mental wellness. There's research. Back in the 1980s in Japan, doctors and researchers developed a therapeutic prescription for patients called Shinrin-yoku. And Shinrin-yoku is forest bathing. Yeah, forest bathing. Bathing in the forest. I mean, you don't have to get in the water. You don't even have to take your clothes off unless you want to. But forest bathing has been shown empirically through research to lower blood pressure, to reduce cortisol levels, to lower stress, right? Your heart rate slows. The health benefits have been documented, scientifically documented. So you just don't go in the woods and think, oh, this is great, it makes me feel so good. There's a reason, there's physiological explanations for why that happens. So it improves the immune system, it reduces respiratory disease, right? Because they're cleaning the air, they're cleaning the water. That's why all the breweries want to come to Asheville. We have such great water. It comes off of the Continental Divide, right? So we have great water here because we're not pumping it out of the river, we're drinking it off the side of a mountain. It gets filtered. So in 2018, Asheville published an urban forest research that they had done comparing canopy from 2008 to 2019. Allison could probably speak more about this than I can. She's more of an expert on this. But I want to show that they were using a software model that were specifically developed by the Forest Service and by some other contributors, but mostly by the Forest Service. And it was one of the first times where these services, the clean air, the clean water, the flood mitigation, the urban heat island effect mitigation, were actually quantified and valued. Like there's a cost. There's a value, that a money amount. And this is one of the first times, I think this was done in Asheville, where they found, using this model, changes. Well, this is a lot of text. I just put this out here to show you that the iTree software model takes all of these things into consideration. So when you read the list of the input into iTree, there's your list of forest ecosystem benefits. Right, there it is. That's what they're telling you. They're telling you about the CO2. They're telling you about the pollution. They're telling you about human health. Right, so these, because this is the list of variables that iTree analyzes in their model, those are the things that are important. Output from that 2018, it shows that there was a 6.4% loss of canopy. 6.4% of our canopy was lost, mostly due to development. And in the dark blue areas, that's the highest lost, right? So minus 16 to minus 15%. I know that text is really small. But as you get lighten up in the blue and you start going green, this turquoise right here, turquoise in the middle is 0. And as you go green, that's increasing canopy. 6.4% average loss overall in the city limits of the tree canopy. And the results of the loss of that canopy, according to this model, is that whenever there's a parcel, a residential parcel, the value of the real estate decreased as canopy decreased. In fact, there was a study that was done in Portland that showed just having a single tree in your yard increased your property value. Right? So your property values, that's important to people in Asheville. Real estate here, right? Another thing that they found was that there's a value reduction in air quality just by losing 6.4% of our canopy. We lost $23,000 in value, right? We're putting a cost on the loss of these trees, right? The carbon sequestration, $7 million was lost in those 10 years over that period of time because only 6% of our forest canopy was lost, just 6%. But look at the cost of losing just that number of trees, right? And those are just two of the parameters, right? I talked about air quality and I talked about carbon sequestration. Those are only two of the parameters. Here's a third one, stormwater, right? $1.6 million in added treatment costs. So when we lose forests in the urban setting, guess who pays for it? The community pays for that. The community pays for stormwater treatment. It comes on your water bill every 2 months. The community pays for whatever respiratory issues you might incur because our air is so polluted, right? Not now, but if we keep losing trees, it's just going to get worse. The cost of heating and cooling our homes when we lose that canopy, when we lose the cooling effect of forest and trees near our house, right? So that was published in 2018. There's currently underway another attempt to quantify and place value on urban forests in Asheville. I highly recommend that you go to the website and find out what they're doing, because they're working really hard, and they're asking for a lot of input from the community. Some of you may have already done the survey. I think it closed in March. But they're working really hard. It's going to be difficult. Some of the criticisms of this new research that's being done is that it's not necessarily comparable to the old research because they're using different methodology. But it's still an attempt to quantify. It's also not including the entire urban forest, right? They're doing surveys along right-of-ways and only certain distances from right-of-ways. And there's a big difference between a single street tree, which is important, and a contiguous acreage of multiple trees and diversity. So the effect is much bigger, of course, with the larger group of trees of the forest. So there is some work being done, but I highly encourage you to go to this website. And now that we know that we can place a value on these services, they cost money. So when developers are talking about the value of building this building, and yeah, we need housing, and yeah, we need all of these amenities, but there's ways that you can do it so that you're not eliminating the services. You're not losing the value. Put the cost of those services into the equation. And don't just think about the money you're going to make, think about the value you're losing. I know I went quick, but I only had a few minutes. Probably went over.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much to Sierra Club and to Judy and for having me. I was really honored to be here, so thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to maybe use this other mic. Well, I'll try to do this. I'll just be away. I'm going to go kind of fast. First of all, I want to thank Mary and David for allowing me to be a little bit of a pinch hitter. I'm going to use this other mic. Okay, I'm just going to hold this. The whole Madonna thing. Okay, testing, fine. Louder, louder. Okay, hi, everybody. You may have heard me present in January with Keith Aiken, who's our urban forester and also a North Carolina forest representative. I'm really happy to be able to join in and give a little bit more detail and think about, basically we're dovetailing. It's very similar. But also, what can we do, right? What should Asheville be doing right now? Especially because we didn't just lose that 6.4% over that one decade. We lost a lot of trees during the storm, right? So our canopy is even more reduced. So that's a lot more value that we lost and that we need to get back. So I also want to take a global perspective. What could Asheville learn from other cities that have done really innovative things around the world? And why aren't we implementing innovative things right now? And looking forward. I'm going to just skip this. I want us to be aware of Wilma Dykeman, a fabulous author from our area that we should also know, and who the Greenway, part of the Greenway is named after, and also Joyce Kilmer, who our wilderness area is named after. Okay, this is the data that Mary was talking about. There's a book called The Nature Fix that documents all those health benefits of being time in nature. And it's exactly what Mary said and more. There've been studies in China, in Japan, in the US. And so I encourage you to read this book, The Nature Fix. We're having a book group about it in Asheville. If you want to join our last meeting, talk to me and I'll put you on the email list. And also, if you haven't read Last Child in the Woods, this is about nature deficit disorder of our children who are now kind of afraid to go in the woods or just feel more comfortable with electronic devices. And Mary touched on systems thinking, but how are our forests linked to regional or national forests? And how do policies overlap to protect them? Like city policies versus county policies versus state policies. They're not actually well linked, and they need to be better. We've already well covered the benefits of forests, but they are numerous, and healthy forests lead to climate resilience, right? We already saw flooding again. If we had maybe worked a little harder to cover those landslide areas from Helene and reforest and restore our stream banks, that would help offset the flooding that we're experiencing. And also small forests, right? Sometimes people are like, well, we have those huge national forests, we're good. Although as Rob told us, if the roadless rule is rescinded, we have to stay vigilant. But there is a scholar in Japan called Dr. Miyawaki that studied these small forests and is advocating for planting small groves in urban areas. So planting 10 to 30 native species densely together on prepared soil. I think we need to push for these Miyawaki forests here in Asheville and also protect our small forest fragments. Beyond the woods, the gorgeous 45 acres here at UNCA, there are some other small forest fragments remaining in Asheville, and we need to protect them before they're all gone. Because trees are part of our city's infrastructure, right? They're the green infrastructure. We always think about gray infrastructure, which is the built environment, but we need to think about wetlands and forests as part of the infrastructure of our city, including green roofs and rain gardens. So we need to have more of these rain gardens, which there are some, like the Fresh Market parking lot actually has good stormwater retention in the parking lot. And there are a couple on campus, but we need more of this to catch the stormwater before it goes straight into the river. Mary already mentioned pervious versus impervious surfaces, but we need more permeable. We need to remove some of the parking lots, right? When you look around, we have too many parking lots and we have a lot of impervious surface near rivers. We need to construct wetlands in those areas instead. So again, I'm pushing for rain gardens or what can be called bioswales or constructed wetlands. Imagine if we had constructed wetlands along the French Broad River and the Swananoa River. Imagine how much stormwater that could store before it goes into the river. So what are other cities doing? Bangkok is really amazing, and they have this Benjikiti Park that's 180 acres in the heart of Bangkok, and it has a lot of constructed wetlands. And this is called a sponge city. So a sponge city is a city that has intentionally created wetlands to store and slowly return water to the system, or forested areas as well. So it's using nature-based solutions to absorb, store, treat, and release rainwater. Instead of just having pipes move around our stormwater, you can rely on natural systems. Copenhagen has also done this. They had flooding in 2011. They became the world's first sponge city. So you can see this area, it's like a seeding area, but it's also really a constructed wetland that would capture stormwater. We could do this around Asheville. All these other cities in the US and abroad are doing it. Curitiba, Brazil, also doing innovative things. Back in 2013 to 2016, they planted 139,000 trees, including 10 mini forests, so 10 of the Miyawaki forests. And they had all these different criteria for planting of trees, the species, the function, native species, adapted to climate extremes, right? We have to think about our planting zones and how temperature is going to change. So some things we should be thinking about: the urban heat island effect, our loss of our urban forests, how do we care for the trees we have, and how can you get involved? So there's a principle called the 330-300 principle that is that every person should view at least 3 trees from their home, live in neighborhoods with at least a 30% tree canopy, and I'm going to totally agree with Mary that the data that we're seeing is a little bit wonky. So when you hear canopy percentage numbers, proceed with caution. And that we should all be within 0.2 miles of a park, which could be a small grove of trees. Right now we have Pritchard Park, we have Pack Square, but we really need a lot more city parks. We really do. So that people should be able to walk to a green space. Urban canopy is a term that's used a lot now, and since we're doing this urban forest master plan, the first one that Asheville has ever had, this is like a critical moment in time. And the urban canopy just means the tree cover in a city, both private and public. So it's street trees, it's city trees, it's trees in homes. So you all have influence, so you can get your neighbors, and if you have a home yourself, to plant the right tree in the right place on your property or your neighbor's property. So Mary mentioned this. There's actually been quite a few studies, and they're available, sometimes hard to find, but we had the Urban Tree Canopy Study by Davy Resources Group. I had 6.8%, 6.4, 6.8, one of those. Then we had an Asheville Heat Map Study by a UNCA McCullough Fellow here with Greenworks. Then NASA did a mapping urban heat to support cooling issues, et cetera. And now we're in the middle of the master plan process. That's being run by Urban Canopy Works, which is a consulting group out of Louisville, I believe, Louisville, Kentucky. And they're, I think, doing a pretty decent job, actually. I think you're familiar with the term urban heat island. As a refresher, it's when the impervious surfaces or buildings capture heat during the day, like black asphalt or buildings, and then they slowly release it at night. But those buildings capture more heat than trees, for example. So you can see it's hotter in a downtown area than in a rural area. And this is the McCullough Fellow study, but basically you can see the heat footprint with the red in downtown Asheville and on our corridors, our transportation corridors that are built up. And this is pre-Helene, right? And then they went around town with a thermometer and measured the temperature in different places. Oh, I think, Ava, you were in that group, weren't you? So just 1 minute walk between Carrier Park Field and the Velodrome was a 4-degree temperature change. And are you following what's happening in Delhi right now, y'all? It's like over 100 degrees in Delhi, to the point where my friend's phone shut off from being overheated while she was outside walking. Schools have been closed. It's crazy. So Helene, we need to think about what are we doing to recover in terms of our ecology and our mental health too. But on your property, you could, if you had a lot of property, you can consider a conservation easement with one of our great local organizations. But also, if you have downed trees, you can make sure they're on the ground, touching the ground to decompose naturally and provide habitat for organisms. So that's all I'm saying. They need to be touching the ground. Let's be nemophilist. We love trees. Also get fire-wise. So we do need to be wildfire aware, and there are different areas of risk. So you don't want to have anything flammable within 10 feet of your home, and then you want to have your defendable space is within 30 feet. So clean your gutters, remove all the stuff under your deck. Like if you're storing random stuff under your deck, that's quite a fire hazard. And there is a program, Firewise program, and individuals from that will come to your homeowners association, or we'll do neighborhood presentations for you for free. So you want to protect the critical root zone of your tree. That's the drip line around the hole where the branches reach out. You don't want to be planting anything there, parking there, pavement there. You want to protect that zone. And please use a certified arborist if you're going to do work. So we need to be good about our tree planting and maintenance. Asheville Greenworks has many, many tree giveaways. So please follow their news to do those. We need more conservation easements. Riverlink does small conservation easements if there is a creek or stream associated. Otherwise, for big ones, we have Conserving Carolina and the Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy. But what we really need is an urban forest land trust. We do not have a land trust for small urban parcels. And that has to be associated with a nonprofit organization that would manage that conservation easement. And then we could apply these innovative techniques to Asheville and slow down and retain our rainwater. Riverlink has a water-rich program for rain barrels on your property if you want to get some rain barrels. I think I'm going to go maybe so fast through this. So the city did a survey of our opinions for the Urban Forest Master Plan. It was a little bit prescriptive, I would say. So the Tree Protection Task Force did a more open-ended survey, and this is what we found. So one of my questions for you is to think about, if you could preserve any urban forest location in Asheville, what would be your top 3 choices? I obviously know one of them, but I can think of 2 more beyond the woods. So North Asheville was overrepresented in our little tiny survey. We only had 110 responses. Look at that, ecosystem services, top value, hello. People find joy or peace in our public greenways, parks, and gardens, and in their yard, and there's the UNCA Woods. So that's interesting. How would your neighborhood be impacted? Hotter, less attractive, etc. Where are trees needed? So we're going to give this survey data to the consultants for the Urban Forest Master Plan so they could have this kind of input, because that question was not asked on their survey. So you can see where. And then what would you like to see included in the Urban Forest Master Plan? Plant more trees, tree policies. Our tree policies for the city of Asheville are very weak. We could talk about that later. So a couple other local examples. Did you know Beaver Lake, which maybe you enjoy birding there, walking around, it's 8 acres. It was protected by our local Audubon Society. That was going to be a strip mall, right? So the Audubon Society got with the city of Asheville in 1988 and bought the property. So thank them for that. Yeah, so that's a great example of a nice little urban forest. The greenways that we have are some kind of green space. It could be better. And we do also need to think about connectivity, right? Are these greenways connecting to other forested areas, or are they really bubbles and just pockets? So Riverlink has conservation easements for the Gateway Park, which is new, sort of north of the River Arts Greenway, the Karen Craig Nolan Park, and many more urban parks. So this is another piece some of you may or may not know. It's called the Ravenscroft Woods. It's on Collier Avenue, kind of behind Twin Leaf Brewing. And it's tiny. It's only half an acre. It's not protected. It will be developed. But there's a couple of folks who've been trying really hard for 10 years to protect this one little urban oasis. It's like the last remaining forest in the South Slope. So wouldn't that be cool if that were protected? Okay, how can you get involved? So you can join the Tree Protection Task Force. I'm the co-chair. I've got a sign-up sheet right over here if you want to join. You can attend public meetings about the Urban Forest Master Plan. There's one coming up at the end of June. I believe it's June 25th. First time the Urban Forestry Commission has met since the storm, y'all. The commissions were put on hold. Only recovery boards are meeting. So it's a huge deal that the Urban Forestry Commission is actually going to have a meeting. You can follow Friends of WNC Trees on Facebook. And you can nominate a tree on your property to be a treasured tree. There's a few pamphlets going out around about that, but basically if you want to celebrate your tree, you get a plaque and a certificate, and I'm also on that committee, so we'll come out and celebrate your tree for you, and you can feel good about it. Actually, Susan Roderick, who's here, started the program 20 years ago. Thank you, Susan. Yes. And then the last thing, I just want to make a plug. I'm the forest specialist with Adventure Scientists. We're a community science organization, global org, and we just launched 2 projects in the eastern US on 2 awesome trees, butternut trees and beech trees. And we would love for you to get involved as a volunteer. So you can sign up, you can just go to our website, sign up for our newsletter. We're using an app called TreeSnap, and you conduct health assessments on these 2 different species, all throughout 19 states in the eastern US. Do you have a question or comment? Okay, I think we're going to hold to the end. We're going to come to you. I'm just going to tell you that you should be worried about your butternut and your beech trees, right? We feel like beech trees, they're everywhere, right? Well, okay, here's the range, similar ranges. We're working with a lot of really cool partners. I'm going to skip this. There are 2 diseases affecting beeches, y'all, so you should be looking out for these. One is beech bark disease. It's the bark, it looks waxy. It's a scale insect that's biting a hole in the bark, and then a fungus gets in there. And then the other one is beech leaf disease, which is brand new, showed up in North Carolina last year for the first time. And it is a nematode, a little worm that gets into the leaves. Places like Pennsylvania, all of their beech are affected in the entire state of Pennsylvania, y'all. This is serious. So get ready. And we're going to have so people are collecting leaves or leaflets. We're mailing them to Purdue University or University of Connecticut, and we're doing genetics on these leaves to get the whole genetic diversity of those trees throughout their whole home range. So it's a pretty cool project. Got a little recommended reading. If you love trees like me, you want to read all these books, I recommend them all. Also, shout out to local native plant societies and the master gardeners, master naturalists. They are cool orgs if you want to learn more about plants. And I think that is it. We need trees. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Allison. Thank you, Mary. David, do you want to make any beginning statements at all? And then we will take your Q&A, and you're welcome to stay as long as you want. This prevents you from having...
No, thank you. Hi there. There were just 2 points I was going to try and squeeze into my little PowerPoint. First of all, it's location and area of a forest. So if we have 45 acres on the south end of campus, is it really that special? Is it special because a botanist lives next to it? 2 of them? Yeah. No, you're skeptical. You want more data. And what it represents is the very end, the terminus, the southern terminus of an urban wildland interface that starts right there, just north of downtown, and then pulls up through campus, right through here, up on Chestnut Ridge, down across Beaver Lake, up Elk Mountain, and into the Craggy Mountains. So that is a corridor for wildlife and for other organisms so they can travel. And it probably explains why we see bears in downtown Asheville, right? I mean, they have habitat there. Bears, of course, need the safety of trees. They are afraid of you, just to be clear, right? So if you're around, they want to see where a tree is. And certainly when they have their babies, they want to have that tree so they can go up there for safety. So if you have a continuous forest coverage in that swath, then we have the rare opportunity of bringing a world-class wilderness down into town, right into town, and that's a resource that I think is hard to replace. The question about the area of the forest is also significant. If we have the largest unprotected urban forest in Asheville, is that the same, could we say like, well, we'll just find a few big trees around neighborhoods that total to the same area and we'll save those ones? And then we don't have to worry about taking down the forest. That is not true. I encourage you to get the song of the wood thrush on your phone. You're all nature freaks, you know how to do this, right? It sounds like a flute playing. We have the privilege of hearing those all day and all night, all through the summer. Now they do migrate through the area. You can hear them in April when they come through, but they are trying to breed in our little woods. These guys come from the neotropics. They come thousands of miles, and they have it rough when they get here because they nest on the ground in interior forest. And forests that have a lot of edge effect, a lot of area around them, they get hammered by raccoons, skunks, and yes, your fluffy cat, right? So they have a lot of nest predation, and they need a large area of forest so they can have a successful breeding population. The other example I was going to use is the woodpeckers. We are blessed to have a complete woodpecker fauna in our 45-acre woods. Yes, we're so proud of it, right? This is a big deal. So we have the little baby downy woodpecker, and then we have its cousin, like its big bad brother, the hairy woodpecker. And then we move up to the yellow-bellied sapsuckers, which come only in the winter. Then the red-bellied woodpeckers. And then the thing that I'm pretty sure, I'm just a botanist, I think it's a pterodactyl, but we call it the pileated woodpecker, and you know when those things are coming through. What we don't have is the ivory-billed, and those are probably extinct. But the ecological principle is what we call niche partitioning by size. That is, animals can coexist together if they are slightly different sizes, even though their job is like, hey, I'm a woodpecker, I peck on wood. Right? Well, the downy will get the small branches, the hairy will get the bigger ones, and then a pileate will take apart a tree in a day or two, so don't you worry about that, right? So they come in for the big grubs, and that's how they feed their babies. I got in a little trouble, as I tend to do with the Save the Woods folk, when I wrote a little nature note and said, well, you know what we really need to do is we need some prescribed fire in those forests. Right? We really need to burn those woods, right? Oops, right? And then we can get the red cockaded woodpecker back because we have shortleaf pine forest, and we could restore that forest and bring back the federally endangered red cockade, cute little guy, right? And it is last known to breed in shortleaf pine forest in Tennessee in about the 1970s. So I still have my hope. A little note about the program tonight. I was canceled from the schedule. Turns out one slide I had was a little bit controversial about what the university is doing, and I kind of laid it all out there. And I guess, you know, in the end, I'm not that optimistic about saving these woods or development in general because of things like this, right? So here's another example. I was on the board of the Botanical Gardens for 25 years, and they want to have a good relationship with the university. They need to have a good relationship with the university. And they get TDA grants, you know, TDA, the Tourism Development Authority. They were told they can't get another TDA grant unless they have a long-term lease on the 10 acres that they occupy with the university. All right, well, so we've approached them discreetly about, would you help support us? Because, hey, when those woods are destroyed next to the gardens, then the gardens will suffer, right? And they said, well, no, we have to be really quiet about that because we don't want to get the university mad at us. So a similar situation happened here tonight, and it's the one reason why I'm kind of discouraged, right? I'll just tell you a little bit about the Millennial Campus Commission. They are slick. They know what they do. And those consultants, I'm not sure how much they get paid, but I know McKinsey, when they show up, it's $1 million, and they earn their money. And they have very carefully scripted minutes of meetings that we're not invited to that are leading to a result which will be development. It will have a veneer. There'll be something like the Arboretum helped us design the nature trail. Yay, that's conservation. But they are set on development. One of the minutes talked about positive examples at other universities that did development on the campus. Well, those mention places that used to be steel mills or retail developments or things like that. So not recognizing the value of an intact natural area compared to just space that's already been paved and developed, that's what we're missing, right? Including that cost, which these two have adequately described for us tonight. So that's kind of the state of play, but you guys are sophisticated, and I know you have some questions, so you have 3 people that can answer them.
Yeah, please wait for the mic to come to you, because the people online can't hear your question unless you have the mic. So please, just raise your hand. If you have a question, we'll bring the mic to you. In the meantime, I'm going to ask a question from online while the first person gets a mic. This is from Mayo. What would be the smallest area to be considered as an existing small forest area worthy of preservation in the city?
Maybe not.
I mean, I think that the Collier Woods or Ravenscroft Woods, it's a half acre. I think, we could talk about the ecosystem services. It's not providing all the ecosystem services, but it certainly is a nice shady area that would provide some psychological benefit. And if it had like benches and trails, it would be a really great asset, including for tourists. So I have had this question about like, is a tree, kind of what you said about the value of like a single tree versus a grove. And I'm always going to push for a grove. And also for diversity of species and diversity of layers, right? You want to have your ground layer, your shrubs, and your canopy. You don't want to just have only trees, in my opinion. Yeah.
Go ahead, Tina.
Okay, as you're aware, they're putting up more Christmas tree farms in the state. Does that present a problem for the ecology?
It depends on what they're doing it on. And if it's an already existing quality natural area, yes. If it's something that's already in agriculture production, maybe not that much. I'd say there's threats with groundwater. They irrigate the heck out of those things. And there's also issues with pesticides and fertilizer runoff because they want to get those trees growing fast so they can sell them to you quickly. They grow them at too low of an elevation, right? There's not enough land at 5,000 and 6,000 feet, so they grow them at 3,000 feet where they need to be under irrigation in the summer, and then they need to be spread because of the pest pressure. So yeah, I don't consider Christmas tree farms as very environmental. We just have a philodendron we call Phil, and we hang an ornament on them, and that's Christmas. But my wife will tell you that I hate Christmas, and I'm really not, presentable in the company. Sorry, did I get your? Yeah.
Question for Allison. You've done a lot of work on sacred groves. I have no idea what a sacred grove is. Could Collier Woods or the UNCA Woods be considered such, or for TDA purposes?
Oh gosh, I don't know about that. Thanks so much. I study sacred forests in India. That was the first photo on the first slide was from India. And these are culturally protected forests. We did have many in the US, but we don't have as many left anymore. And it's just a community protected area that has spiritual value. So I think depending on how you define it, sure. And I've been hearing about the global movement to sort of sacralize areas. So sort of having a ceremony and maybe having like a multi-faith area. So I think that'd be an interesting avenue to pursue, and I do think there are cultural value. There are cultural values. So these groves have spiritual and cultural values. So I wish that's part of the ecosystem services chart, and all my research is in that cultural values segment. Well, not all, because the forest, if they're culturally protected, still are providing provisioning and regulating services. So I feel like that is the piece that's undervalued the most. So we really need, although China and Japan are valuing it now, but in the US, I wish we valued the spiritual and cultural benefits of nature more overtly.
Yeah, question for Allison. If you said the Ravenscroft Woods is going to be developed, that's your expectation, but if it were to be preserved, what would that path to preservation look like?
Great question. So I'm sorry, this is like a rabbit hole a little bit because I'm working on this for like over 10 years. We almost had to deal with the city, like maybe 8 years ago. So what it would look like, what it was going to be, it would be like the Beaver Lake example. So it was going to be a cost share. The developer had agreed to give it to us at a lower price. And then it was like the community did a GoFundMe or whatever and raised some money. And then the city was willing to kick in half. But at the last minute, the plan, it fell through. And then the prices skyrocketed, right? So this was back before the real estate was so insane. So this is why I think an urban forest land trust is needed, because places like Riverlink or Conserving Carolina, they work with a landowner to survey the land, put the property in a conservation easement, and Buncombe County will even help to pay those survey costs. So there's a program through Buncombe County to help with some of those costs. There is a recurring, like a carrying maintenance cost, because you have to not resurvey, but check the property every year to make sure everything looks good. So yeah, I mean, that's why I want to see an urban forest land trust, is that there'd be a mechanism to preserve these smaller parcels. There's another really interesting parcel on Ashland Avenue. So next time you're driving down there, look at it. There's a long history. The city, it goes back to redlining, and the city promised it to be an urban park to redline neighborhoods, and they never came through on it. So that's another kind of green space, but it's more of a grassy area than a forest area. Steve wants to say something. Steve H.
Hi, Allison. Most urban planners push the idea of density in urban areas, which is not all bad because it prevents some sprawl and other things. But unless density is offset somehow, you lose the character and the walkability and the green benefits in the city. And this is picking up on your point about an urban land conservancy or land trust, which is very much needed. If we're going to push for density in some areas, really that has to be planned well and all set, particularly riparian areas that are naturally attuned to having green space and connections, riparian connections or other ecosystem services that are connected. It seems like sometimes cities forget that key element because it's hard to go back and retrofit. Like in our city, we have a real problem with retrofitting because you got to get enough soil in to even plant street trees. And usually not enough soil is put in and the trees don't live as long.
Yes, I totally. Steve and I have been in the trenches on a lot of committees. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I encourage you all to speak up, inform yourself. You're going to hear about the missing middle housing initiative that is going on nationwide, actually, and that's missing middle-sized housing is what like a fourplex. So there's a push for that, and sure, we need affordable housing. We have plenty of housing. It's all just really expensive, right? We see apartment buildings and hotels and condos being built crazy, everywhere, crazy, but it's not affordable. This push for housing, it's usually put as a dual narrative where it's like trees or housing. But there is a way that we could have trees and housing. And our UDO is about to be revised to allow more infill development. So I encourage you to, it's a universal development ordinance of the city. So if you want to get in the weeds on this, there's plenty of stuff you could inform yourself about. My hope comes from the FEMA buyouts, right? So there are some FEMA buyouts happening. Some of that is in the floodplain, and that if a property undertakes the buyout, that property goes into green space, and it's managed by the city or the county forever. So we are going to get some more green space in the floodplain. So that is some great news. But yes, let's be aware and talk to people about how unfortunately the development ordinances are such that you can't even fit trees onto properties because we have a form-based code and you just basically build to the lot line. So we do have a fee in lieu program. You could research the fee in lieu program. That's another rabbit hole. But the commercial developers, you have to pay a little bit of money, a payment in lieu of saving the tree. So for cutting the tree down, they pay some money in a pot, and that pot is sitting there right now. The city manages it. So that's a whole other side note.
Just a couple of things. If you're interested in this missing middle or changes to the development ordinances, there is a open house on the 28th at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation on Charlotte and Edwin Place from 6 to 8, where you can come in, ask questions, find out more about some of the things being proposed and some of the things being considered. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in that, to show for that. Second thing is one of the ways we've been able to conserve some green space and land has been through, the city did some, but particularly the county did a bond referendum 4 years ago where the voters approved $30 million in bonds that was used to preserve open space, greenways, things like that. It's very likely that there'll be another bond on this year's ballot this fall for another $30 million for buying and preserving open space and creating greenways and things like that. If you're interested in that, on the 18th of this month, in June, the county commission will be voting on whether to put that on the ballot this fall. So if you're interested in that and supporting of that, show up at that meeting, 5 o'clock at the county commission, and let people know that you support that happening.
So the subject here is trees and parking lots. So the survey question said, where would you like to see trees? I was looking for parking lots on that list, and I didn't see it. And it just bugs me no end to drive down the street and see probably a couple of acres of asphalt, oftentimes without a single car on it, and no trees. So my question is there any movement here to try to either regulate or incent planting trees in parking lots, particularly old parking lots? So I'm sure it's probably different to do it with new construction versus old, but it seems like there'd just be tremendous value out of that. So I'm wondering if anybody's trying to make that happen.
So that would be a UDO amendment, and it would only affect new construction. Yeah, I've lived in other states where you had to have a certain number of trees per parking space. And of course, everyone's parking under the tree in the shade. So I just want to call out Ingalls. Ingalls is sitting on property in our town, y'all. Like every empty, huge parking lot, the one on Patton, the old Kmart, the Steinway on Merriman, the empty parking lot across from City Bakery on Charlotte, those are all owned by Ingalls, and they are sitting on it. So we can't do anything with that old parking lot because they own it. But I mean, some guerrilla action would be pretty funny. But yeah, we need to get rid of a lot of that pavement. But Steve and I have sat on these city, we were like on an open space committee and a committee on street tree soil volume for 2 years. I mean, talk about painful. So yeah, you just have to go to these meetings and just keep kind of grinding on it. But yeah, we have to change the ordinances, and it's very slow going. So I guess maybe another way would talking to businesses, and maybe just do it person to person and try to speak some logic to people. Fresh Market's doing it. I just have to shout out, the Fresh Market parking lot is actually great. But you very rarely see, what you'd want is a curb cut. You don't want a curb around your soil. You want a cut so the water can get into the soil. So basically we created all these planting islands where they can't, like, you want it to recess and then the water to run into it. I was in Knoxville. They've got this in Knoxville. I was in Greenville, South Carolina. Their parking lots are great. They've got rain gardens along every street. I'm like, well, why can't we do this? We're Asheville. So, I don't know, but 100%.
Got a question from online. This is from Sharon in Forest City. And Sharon says, I just planted 39 trees on my half acre this spring. I'm trying to develop a forested area that widens the tree area already there. Is there anyone that can look at what I'm doing and give me further advice?
Yes. April Wilson, shout out, amazing arborist, Stump Sprouts Company. Extension would be great. In the Master Gardeners, you can go to the extension office on whatever that road is over.
She's from Forest City.
Forest City.
Not Asheville.
Polk County. Oh, go to your extension office in Polk County. Just a certified arborist. One thing I would say, I have a friend who's doing that. She's rewilding her yard. Please stay vigilant about invasive species. If you aren't vigilant, you're going to have a thatch of privet, or you're going to have like porcelain berry everywhere, or whatever, Japanese knotweed. So yeah, just talk to a certified arborist or extension office, or master gardeners or master naturalists.
We have time for one more question, and then these guys will be around for a few minutes, and you can corner them and get all the answers you ever wanted.
Let me ask one here. Has anybody looked for endangered species on the school property?
Yeah, we have the tricolored bats. Thanks for asking. Yes.
Because the Endangered Species Act can block that construction.
Slow them down. It'll slow them down. So I should point out, if you want more information about Save the Woods, there's a table outside. You can sign up, sign the petition. And yes, we're collecting bat recordings. I just like saying bat recorder, because you get to hang these things in the woods and they collect the ultrasonic sounds. You can't hear the bats as they make the echolocation noises, but it records that sound and then translates it into the calls that identify certain species. So we're getting some help on that one. The bats are in trouble because of white nose syndrome, and they like mature trees because there's more nooks and crannies. They have their babies in there in the summer, so they need little overhanging pieces of bark or house in the trees, and then they can roost in there, take care of their babies. The problem is in the hibernacula, where they go in the winter, they're spreading the white nose syndrome. That's the fungal disease. So they're, and you know, this one person said, well, they just wait until the bats are gone in the winter and then take down the trees. So it may not be adequate, but it's enough that will compel them to do an environmental analysis, an environmental impact statement. It'll cost them money, it'll slow them down. So it's one of our key foci right now.
Dave, did you have somebody over there that was in line? Okay, we'll take these two and then.
What's happening in that Richmond Hill or Richmond Park area? What?
They got that protected. That was going to be a development. I think it's not city property.
It is Woodfin, and it's a conservation easement now. I think it's SAHC maybe. Yeah, that was a success. Way to go.
And Sierra Club was one of the organizations leading the charge to protect that.
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, but that's Woodfin, not the city.
I just want to urge the Urban Forest Council, since you're getting back and getting active again, to go back and try to work with the planning department to study original plans of a lot of the developments, because we had trees in every new parking lot. And if you go by Wendy's on Merriman Avenue, there's not one tree in that parking lot. And they were required to plant those, and they were required to replace them if they were missing. and they don't. When they're missing, they're just gone. The Y in Woodfin is missing trees. And I could go on and on. McDonald's on Merriman kept all their oaks. Look at the Enmark gas station. They kept their trees that they were required to plant, and it's beautiful. That's where I buy my gas, is at Enmark. So I just want to say that the Urban Forest Council might have that as a good project to go back to all these where they were required to do it. They have the money. They can afford to do it. I'll help them plant them, but they need to put trees back, because if you go to Wendy's in the parking lot, it's like what you say, it's so hot. Or the Lowe's, all the Lowe's should have trees out in the parking lots.
My complaint is we have all these ways of getting into Asheville, and they're all ugly except Broadway. We have Tunnel Road, we have Leicester Highway, we have Patton Avenue, and it's nonstop like concrete and neon. So adding some trees to that situation would be better, for everyone, including tourists. Yeah.
Again, thank you. We want to thank you guys for coming. I know there's a couple more questions. If you guys will grab these guys right after, because we're at 8:30. But again, thank you for coming tonight. We hope to see you at our picnic, July 18th on Saturday, West Asheville Park.
Yes, please look at our website. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Sure. Thanks. Okay, let me just stop this recording.